Quite honestly, this feels like a make or break fight at featherweight. Coming up this weekend, we have China's Shayilan Nuerdanbieke, the Wolverine, and he's coming from wherever they make brick shit houses. He's taking on Sean Soriano, a guy who started off with Black Zillion, stayed there with Hard Knocks 365. He's still there with Sanford MMA. Sean Soriano's a guy that, listen, he has been in Boca Raton, where they sell Wolf Cola, something that the Wolverine might know a little bit about, for the longest time. He's been a stalwart at the gym. He's there with the Michael Johnsons, with the Michael Chandlers, with the Gilbert Burnses. And when Sean Soriano puts it all together, you best watch out. Christos Giagos found that out in the first round of their fight. He had a combination, what was it, left hook, right hook, and then all of a sudden Giagos is on baby deer legs. The first calf kick that Sean Soriano landed in his UFC re-entry drops Giagos. Like, this guy has great power, great technique, and the best part about it is, that's not even Sean Soriano's best part to his game plan. His takedown defense, iffy, but his takedown offense, this is a guy that spent time in high school and in college wrestling, and when things are on his terms and he's rolling, I could paint you a picture of a Jerry West NBA logo as Sean Soriano. And I've said a lot in the last 45 seconds. Hopefully some of it's caught your attention, because for me, Soriano, when he's on, can be a very special athlete. And I mean, listen, the pressure that the UFC put on this guy in his UFC debut was friggin' insane. He fought Kawajiri in a co-main event in 2014. That was the UFC's debut in Singapore. That's insanity. So for Sean Soriano, again, he's gained in certain areas, he lacks in some areas. And Matt, what was the biggest issue that cost him his last fight?
You can't be sprawling, or at least in somewhat of a sprawl position, against a guy like Christos Giagos. And it was just so frustrating, because you set it up perfectly. There's a version of Sean Soriano out there who's kind of like a Daniel Rodriguez type, you know? He can throw with a lot of volume on the feet. He has a good combination of power to go along with that volume, great technique, and when things do go to the mat, as long as he's not on his back, you do somewhat trust Sean Soriano. But the issue with Soriano is that he almost finds a way to give the fight away. I know this is something that like Chael Sonnen talked about, and Michael Chiesa has talked about this too. He's further on up the card, but he'll do really well in a lot of these fights, and then it's almost like he finds a way to get into a submission. Now, against a guy like Giagos, that's going to happen. He's one of the best grapplers in the division. I know he's sort of taken his lumps against some of the elite of the division, but still, if you've watched our videos for any length of time, you know how we feel about Christos Giagos. He is a very, very good UFC lightweight. So the fact that Soriano was able to look really good, at least early on in that matchup, in his return to the UFC, is giving me a lot of confidence in this matchup against Shayilan, because what Shayilan demonstrated in his first fight in the UFC against Joshua Culibao, who's a pretty good wrestler in his own right, was that Shayilan's got some pretty good takedowns of his own, and that's what I keep on going back to. I know he can strike, he's got a lot of great TKO wins on his record, but if you really want to think about, okay, how's Shayilan going to go out there and beat a guy like Soriano? It's going to be hard to match him just strike for strike on the feet. We know how technical Soriano is, and like you mentioned, the high-level training partners that he's with on a daily basis is just invaluable to a guy. Like, I know I was showing you on Instagram before we got on, like, oh, Dustin Poirier and Mateusz Gamrot are training together. Like, those guys are going to make each other a lot better because they're both world-class. That's the same thing for Soriano. I know his record might not be as prestigious, or he might not have the name that some of those other guys at Hard Knocks do, but he's a guy who's been there for a very long time, and he really does have that Henry Hoof version of striking.
Yeah, and he's a guy that's had a really weird career. He's had to kind of reinvent himself a couple of times. Now he's back in the UFC, and the reason why I opened this video saying it's make or break, because I could see a world Soriano loses to Shayilan, see you later. And for Shayilan, you're a UFC PI, what was it, award winner to get into the UFC. There was Shayilan, there was Naliang, there was Aoriqileng, who's also on this card. There were quite a few different fighters that debuted weeks apart or on the same card as each other. And for Nuerdanbieke, he ends up fighting, Joshua Culibao, and in the first round, he does great. And then in the second round, he does bad. He gets outstruck 34-5, and then in the third round, 32-9. For Nuerdanbieke, again, his wrestling is really good. He's one of those guys, he gets it up against the cage. He dumps you down. He stacks guard, and then he does a great job raining down blows, finishing fights when he's on top.
You definitely feel his physicality in there.
That's exactly it. Now, I said he comes from the place where brick houses are made, because look at this picture of this guy. Like, give us your tough pose, and that's what he went with, and it's insane. But when I look at his record, again, he went 5-1 in 2020 coming into this one. His only loss was to Rongju, a guy who, for some reason, for better or for worse, I just have this great idea of Rongju one day cracking the rankings. But when I'm going down through my list, Matt, This is a guy that spent a lot of his career at lightweight. For Soriano, he made that re-entry at lightweight, but that Giagos fight was on short notice. Even the commentary team during the fight said he's going to move back down to featherweight. This one, of course, at featherweight. And again, if I look at it for Nuerdanbieke, he's a classic wrestle boxer where he's going to move forward. He's going to blitz forward, throw a big right hand, and then try and take it down to the mat. Is that going to work against Soriano? I mean, Matt, I've got the odds in front of me. I just wrote them down before we started the video. Nuerdanbieke opened a plus 190. He's a plus 211 thereabouts, best fight odds now. For Soriano, open a minus 225. Minus 260, and if we look at the Topology votes, I'm going to say over under 70% Soriano.
I think they'll be over.
Going to be over 80% of 758 total votes. Soriano, 57% by decision, 32% by knockout for the 20% that have Nuerdanbieke, 49% by decision, 26 roughly by submission. Do you see this fight ending by finish? And who do you have to win this one?
I could see it ending by finish. I could see this fight going sort of like Bobby Green versus Aoriqileng, where Nuerdanbieke is a very squared up wrestle boxer, like you had said. And the thing is that his entries are sort of predictable. He's not somebody who moves his head a lot to get it to work his way in. Like we've seen, I don't know, Daniel Cormier is a good example, where he would throw a combination, move his head, get in on the single leg, and then work his wrestling game. What Shayilan sometimes does is he will just square up his stance, try to march you down. Soriano can strike off his back foot, and he can throw punches together. So I could see him sort of getting his rhythm early, landing a good combination on the back foot, and putting Nuerdanbieke down. So I'm going to pick with Soriano, but it is hard to say if he gets it done inside the distance.
I mean, when I look at this fight, Soriano gets stuck in a defensive submission. I mean, a Darce choke there by Giagos in his last fight. He was getting back up to his feet or trying to get up off the mat, and all of a sudden, you know what Christo's going to do. It's like Georgi Karhanyan pulling guillotine or Nick Lentz or whoever. You know exactly what Giagos going to do in that spot. Now, for Nuerdanbieke, can he keep that upper body pressure, which, again, now I'm just calling a spade here, but you look at that picture and you look at the way that Shayilan fights, he fights to his body type, and he understands it very well. This is a guy at a China top team. He's got a guy that lost to Khamzat Chimaev recently, and Li Jingliang over on the Instagrams. I think he's going to have, a better game plan coming into this fight than he did with Kulibao, and the other big positive for him in this fight is the fact that he's going to have his team around him. The last time, if you remember, a lot of the fighters, if not every fighter coming in from the PI, was separated from their coaches. They couldn't make the trip. So for Shayilan, good opportunity here. He's already got his feet wet in the UFC. I think it's still going to be a tough night out because for Soriano, we don't talk about a lot of fighters on their back foot being very good. I mean, you made the comparison to Rodriguez. I think it's a good one because for Soriano, he's got that power on the back foot. Plus, when he's behind that black line on the perimeter of the octagon, he can be one of the better strikers in this division. Now, again, this is a philosophical difference. Are you good in the gym at doing it? Are you good in the cage at doing it? I've seen enough from Soriano in the cage that I think he can do it. Do I think he's a future champ? No. But I think he's going to win this fight against Shayilan Nuerdanbieke.
He's kind of like your boy, Lord Olashaychuk, where, hey, on his best day, he can beat a lot of really great fighters, but on his worst day, he's going to have you scratching your head, and he's going to make you think, hey, maybe you should invest a little bit more time into his takedown defense. So maybe Shayilan is able to go out there, really implement a high volume of takedowns, and maybe he'll look great from the first minute, and he'll just be able to take Sean Soriano down over and over and over again. But I agree with you. I think Soriano's shown the capacity to strike on the back foot, at least accumulate the kind of numbers and damage to where he'll be able to win the fight.
Let us know down below in the comments section who you have. Are you going with the Wolverine or the man with no nickname? We are going both with Sean Soriano. Big time fight card coming up. Far as Ziam taking on Terrance McKinney. You're not going to want to miss that. So keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.